The French Chef is made possible by a grant from Hills Brothers Coffee Incorporated and a grant from the Polaroid Corporation.
How about having a whole three-course dinner waiting for you in one oven? A cheesy little appetizer like this, and a great fishy main course hiding under foil. And for dessert, a fantaisie bourbonnaise. We're doing a full three-course fish dinner in half an hour today on the French Chef. Welcome to the French Chef. I'm Julia Child. We're doing another one of our three-course dinners today. This one is a fish dinner, and it's going to compose, I've got the menu here on one of my cards. It's going to compose a petite caisse au fromage, and that is a little cheese appetizer. And then we're having tranche de poisson à la barbouille. Isn't that a nice name? That's a Provençal fish steak dinner with a tomato and eggplant sauce, and I'm just peeling the eggplant now for it. And then we're going to have, for dessert, a fantaisie bourbonnaise, which is a lovely baked apricot dessert. And this is a little bit different than most of the three-course dinners we've done before, because they've been all cooked and served in half an hour. And this one is going to be so that you can get all the main cooking done anytime you have a half hour to spare, and then you can just warm it up whenever you're ready. So this makes a very nice kind of a meal to have on hand. And as always, when you're doing one of these fast meals, I think it's a very good idea to decide what you're going to do and then try and write out an order of battle. And I've got quite a few of these menus, and I've gotten one order of battle right here, and I'm just following it. And the first item is to peel and dice the eggplant, and then to macerate it in salt. Whenever you're using eggplant, I find that the absolutely best system to do to get out that sort of puckery taste that eggplant has is to let it soak in salt for 20 or 30 minutes, or as long as you have time to do so. And then also what the salt does is to draw out the water. And if you're going to saute eggplant, which we're going to do, and you don't get out this vegetable water that it contains, it just gets terribly messy and gooey. And the salt draws the water out as well as taking out that pucker, which I don't like. I never used to like eggplant at all until I began cooking it in the way the French do. And I've got this in a sieve, and I've put on for about 4 cups of eggplant, put on about a tablespoon and a half of salt, and then just let it sit. And then along with our eggplant, we're going to have some onions and peppers, which will cook with it. I've got a great big onion. This is one of those nice recipes where it doesn't make too much difference what the proportions are, because you may do it one way and you say, oh, well, I like more pepper or less, or more onion or less, so you can do it just the way you want. But this gives the general idea of flavors. There's our onion, and then I have a pepper here. And I'm going to cut this in half lengthwise and take the seeds out. See that? There's seeds that just shake out, and then you have this central business. And then these are all just going to get chopped up, and they can be very rough. This is going to be a Provençal recipe it's called a barbouille, which means it's just sort of a great mixture of all kinds of Provençal things. And there's our onion, and I'm just slicing this roughly up with my big knife. One thing, be sure and practice on your chopping so that when you have to do a little dinner in half an hour, you can do it quickly. Then I'm putting this all into a pie plate, and then these are going to be sautéed. And so these are going to be cooked in olive oil, because this is in Provence, you always cook everything in olive oil. But you can use salad oil or whatever you like. I always use olive oil. And then in these go into the pan And they're to cook very slowly for about 10 minutes without browning. And then while these are cooking, you can think of the other things that you're going to do in your menu. And I'm cooking these over low heat. And I don't want them to brown, I just want them to cook very, very slowly. And then while they're cooking, I can start in on the dessert. And for the dessert, this is it's called a fantaisie bourbonnaise. And you'll see why as we get onto it. And it's going to bake in the oven, and it's going to go in an oven-proof dish. This is a dessert this is really, I think, a rather simple-minded dessert, but it turns out to be very good. I'm putting about a tablespoon of butter in the pan there, and then I'm going to smear it around, because you want quite a bit of butter to give the proper flavor to things. And then, this comes part of the fantaisie. I'm going to use some chopped peanuts, which I got at my supermarket. In France, peanuts are called cacahuètes. Don't know how they ever got that name. But they're very good in cooking, I think. And then on top of the cacahuète fantaisie goes some granulated brown sugar. This was certainly a great invention. You don't have to chop it up with a meat axe every time you try to use brown sugar. It's about 3 tablespoons of each, and these were unsalted peanuts. And then we come to the apricots. And I'm going to use canned apricots and drain them. And for this dish, which is about 8.5 inches in diameter, I'm going to use 2 1-pound cans of apricots. Then you can drain them and you can save the juice and use it for something else if you like. And then along with that, we're going to have some bananas. Bananas are really awfully good in cooking, I think. I'm going to have 2 bananas. Again, this is the kind of a recipe that it doesn't make too much difference what you do. It's sort of the main idea that counts. And these I'm going to chop in 1/8 inch slices. And then arrange everything in the dish. And if you're very adept, you can arrange them with a spoon. But I find that it always takes me all day. And if I'm going to do anything in half an hour, I'm going to use my impeccably clean hands. And now I'm putting the apricots around the outside of the dish. I like apricots very much. I think they have much more flavor for something like this than peaches do. Then I'll have another row in here. And then the bananas go on top. I always have fun when we were in England saying banana. But they're awfully good in desserts. I love baked bananas anyway. Well, it's a little slippery, so I'll have to use my rubber spatula. And now we have the bourbonnaise part. And this is a 1/4 cup of bourbon whiskey. This is all going to be baked in the oven. And this is terribly good even for children, because all the bourbon, all the alcohol evaporates out, and it leaves just this lovely flavor. And if you don't think bourbon is good in it, just try apricot juice and you'll wish you'd tried the bourbon. Now I'm having one grated rind of a lemon, and then I'm going to have some lemon juice and use my usual system of squeezing it through the corner of my impeccably clean towel. Cleanliness is godliness, they always say. That's me. And now we have some more of our chopped, unsalted peanuts on top. It's about 3 tablespoons. I'll put on a little bit more, because they're awfully good when they cook with this bourbon whiskey. And then a little more brown sugar, about 3 tablespoons. And then a little melted butter, about a tablespoon or 2 of melted butter, which goes on top. And then this whole dish, if you're not going to cook it right away, you can prepare ahead of time and then put it in the oven any time that you're ready to. I'm going to take a look at my vegetables now. Those are going very nicely. Just be sure that they don't brown. And then I'm going to bake this right now, so it's going to go into a 375-degree oven in the upper third. And this should bake for about 40 to 60 minutes. And when it comes out, you want to bake it until all the juices and the bourbon and everything have turned into a lovely syrup. And it's thick and nice. And then you can serve it hot, warm, or cold, whichever way you like. So if you were cooking and serving this dinner at once, you could cook it and, you put it in at about now, and then by the time your dessert was ready, it'd be ready for you. And we're also going to have, with our fish dinner, we're going to have some noodles. And I'm going to use these shell-shaped noodles because I think they go nicely with fish, and they're such a pretty shape. I'm using 2 cups of noodles. I've never known how many cups noodles are supposed to serve. I think 2 is enough, but anyway, if I cook more, I can always use them in a salad. And I'll clean up from my fantaisie bourbonnaise a little bit. And then take another look at my vegetables. Now put these noodles in some boiling salted water, and they take about 15 minutes to cook. And by now it'll be time to take a look at the eggplant. Now the eggplant, it would really be better to drain it a little longer, but even so, you can see there is some water that's come out. And if you drain it for about 20 minutes or so, you'll get quite a bit more water. And this is about 3.5 cups to 4 of diced eggplant, and that's about 1 pound. And it had 1.5 teaspoons of salt on it to macerate it. And now, this is a very important part. If you're going to saute it, you've got to dry it off. And so I've got a double layer of paper towels under there. And then I'm going to put some paper towels on top. Now, this is terribly important if you're going to saute anything, because if it's wet, you're not going to be able to brown them nicely. And so I'm going to put some more paper towels on top and just dry it all off, and then take it over to the stove and start sauteing it, if I can get it all there without dropping it out. Now I'm going to put the onions and peppers are tender, and so I'm going to put them in a side dish here, and then saute the eggplant, and then the onions and peppers will go back in. And then put the pan back over heat and turn it up high. And then, being sure that this eggplant is nice and dry, and I'm going to put in some more oil. You need just about enough oil to film the pan. Then be sure that the oil is nice and hot, and then in goes the eggplant. I'm using one of these Mammoth no-stick pans, which I think are absolutely wonderful for sauteing vegetables, because you do run into the problem with eggplant that it can stick to the pan. And if you use a no-stick pan and make sure that your oil is hot, you're not going to have any trouble. And then rather than stirring them, get used to this technique of holding the pan with your thumbs on top and then just shaking it back and forth. And you're not doing this to the pan, it's just a back and forth and a slight tilt. And when you do it that way, the eggplant stays in the pan and doesn't fall all over the kitchen. And now when we've got the eggplant going, we can really get started on our main course, or the fish. So I'll get rid of a few items, and then into the fish. And this is a nice recipe, this barbouille, because you can use any kind of fish steaks that you want, either lean or oily. And the ones these that I have here, this is just fish steaks cut into serving portions. And the first thing I'm going to do is to sprinkle a little lemon juice on it, because this always gives it an added flavor. On both sides. And I've got to take a look at that eggplant now and just give it another little toss. I want it to brown just very lightly. And then we have salt and pepper on both sides of the fish. There's your pepper. And salt on both sides of it. Always remember, if you're going to do anything, to be sure that you do season the fish properly first, particularly if you're going to saute it and dredge it in flour as we're doing. Now, the eggplant has just browned just enough, and so it's now ready to have the rest of the sauce part. And I'm going to I'm using some of this canned marinara sauce in a jar, which I find very good, and I'm going to put in about probably half a cup. I can always add a little bit more. And then to disguise my shame for having used a ready-bought product, I'll just put in a little bit of not bourbon this time, vermouth. Probably about a third of a cup. I can always add some more if I want. And then we need more flavoring, which we will have some herbs in it and some garlic. And I'll put in, this is some dried basil. If you had fresh herbs, it'd be very nice. That's about probably a tablespoon, and then a teaspoon, and this is about half a teaspoon of thyme. I'm wanting this to boil up pretty fast so that the juices will all reduce. And then in goes some garlic. I'm putting in 1 clove in a garlic press. You can't have a Provençal sauce if you don't have any garlic. And then just let that work. Just let that boil down for a while. And I'm going to put it on another burner over here. And the noodles are cooking nicely. And now it's time to saute the fish. And the kind of fish this is, you could use hake or halibut or cod or fresh tuna or swordfish. I happen to be using a fish that I like very much called cusk, C-U-S-K. It's sometimes called torsk or tusk. And I forgot to put oil in my pan. This is again going to saute in olive oil, being a Provençal dish. Olive oil is supposed to be very healthy and full of vitamins. And then flour on the fish very lightly. I've got the fish on a wax paper here. And just turn it in the flour. Then, and be sure when you flour anything like this before you saute, be sure that you do it only at the last minute or the flour gets gummy. Then also be sure that your oil is good and hot. And then in goes the fish. And again, you want just enough oil to film the bottom of the pan. And you don't want to crowd your pan if this last piece is too big. No, I think that's all right. And then that just should saute for about 2 or 3 or 4 minutes on each side. And you don't want to overcook it. You can cook it, again, with this dish, you can brown it first and then cook it in the oven with your sauce on it. Or you can saute until it's entirely done. It just depends on how you've planned your meal. And now we've got the sauce bubbling, the noodles cooking, the fish sauteing, and we have time now to do our main course. You see, if you follow along this kind of our first course, if you follow along a kind of an order of battle, I've worked this one out so that I think it works very nicely. You can really get all of this done in about half an hour. And this first little cheesy first course is going to be 2 packages of chive cream cheese. This, again, is a very simple thing and turns out to be surprisingly good. I seem to be all covered with flour here. And I'm going to mix it up with one of these mixing forks, which I find extremely useful, and put an egg in it. So that's 2 packages of cream cheese and 1 egg. And that gets all stirred around. if you take your cheese out of the refrigerator a bit of a time ahead so it's soft, it makes it much easier to mix. And then I'm going to put in a little bit of butter in that. That's about 2 tablespoons of softened butter. And that gets all mixed around, squished between the tines of the fork. Beaten up. And then a little more flavoring into the cheese would be a few drops of Worcestershire sauce and some of that hot pepper sauce. And then that is a great sauce base that you can use for many kinds of things. I'm just going to see how my fish is doing now. And that's browned nicely. It's always important when you want to brown to make sure that your oil is hot. Some people will put the fish right in the pan without heating the oil, and then you have a terrible time. That's all right. Now we'll take a look at this. And I've got some, I think I'm going to take my apricots out of the oven now and let it, because I think they were done when I showed them to you, and I just want to take them out because I don't want it to cook too much. And back to our fish again. And now, with this sauce, you can do all kinds of things, and we're going to make a little appetizer. You could serve it just in little ramekins, or I've got some frozen patty shells, which I had in the freezer. And I find them very good. These are store-bought patty shells. And I find them extremely good, and they're certainly handy to have on hand when you want to make a little dinner. And there's some sauce in the bottom. And then you can put anything in these shells, but on top of that you might want to put in some diced cheese, or you could put mushrooms. I'm going to use just some plain canned artichoke hearts so I can get it in, so it just nestles there in the shell. I'm going to turn down my fish a little bit. And then the sauce goes over. If you had just plain little tartlet shells, they would go awfully nicely. Or you could do, we did one time, those toasts, that white bread which was hollowed out and painted with butter and then baked in the oven. Just any kind of a container or just a little custard cup. And then put anything that you would like in it. And these, if you wanted to do this ahead, you'd make your sauce and everything. And then you'd fill the patty shells only at the last minute, and then they're to be baked. And they're going to go right in with this dessert we just put in into a 375-degree oven. And they take about 30 to 40 minutes to cook. And it just depends on how hot your oven is. At 375, it's 30 to 40 minutes. And they're done when the sauce is puffed very lightly and it's just lightly browned. And it really makes an extremely nice little dish. And now the noodles are done. So I'm going to drain them. And I'm going to take a look at that fish to make sure it's all right. I'm going to turn it down a little bit on the way over. And if you happen to have your noodles done before you're done, just let them take them off heat, but leave them in their water when they're still a little bit, al dente, not quite done, and they'll finish cooking in the water and they won't overcook. And then there are the noodles all ready, and they need to be seasoned up. And you can use oil or oil and butter. I like to use both. I just love the taste of olive oil as it's undoubtedly seen. And in goes the butter. And then we want to have a little salt and pepper in. I always cook noodles in fairly heavily salted water. They seem to need it. And then some salt and pepper. And they can sit in that hot pan for a little while because as long as they're oiled up, they don't get sticky. And now we're really ready to assemble our main course. Now, one thing that I absolutely forgot to do, which was, because I had them off, was to put the onions and peppers in. These should have been cooking in with the sauce for as soon as I had put the tomatoes in, so we'll just pretend they did. That was silly after cutting them all up, but that's what happens sometimes. Now we are ready to serve. So we have a nice big platter, and I'm going to butter the platter. This is always a good idea, then the food doesn't stick to it. And then our fish, the fish is done. So that goes on. And then the sauce goes over. And remember that these onions and peppers were supposed to be cooked in it, even so they'll look very nice. And they were soft anyway, so it'll still be a very nice sauce. And then the noodles go around on the other side, on either side of the dish. The nice thing about this dish is that you can get this done ahead of time, and then you can cover it with, after it's cooled off, you can cover it with foil, and then you can heat it in the oven. And the noodles will heat up perfectly well also because they have oil on it. And remember, with your dessert, it's done when it's nice and syrupy, when the juices are syrupy. And so, see, with this, you can get everything done and reheat it in the oven, or you can cook it and your dessert will finish in the oven when you're ready to serve it after changing plates. So, here we are. Another nice thing about this dinner is that if you have one of these hot trays, you can have everything on the hot tray. Here is our little dessert, our little appetizer, and there's our main course on the hot tray, and nestling in this little drawer is the Fantaisie Bourbonnaise, our apricot peanut and bourbon dessert. I'm going to serve you some of the fish so you can see how it is. You see, you've got your big, nice fish steaks, and then your vegetable sauce on top of it. So you don't need to have any vegetables. And there are your noodles in the shape of a shell. So that makes a really very nice first course. And with this, you could serve a rosé wine, and you might want to have some French bread. You don't really need any more vegetables because you have really all the vegetables on the fish. And you can, if you don't have a hot tray, you can keep all of this warm in the oven, and then when you're changing plates, there you are. So in spite of the fact that there's something cheesy about this appetizer, and this is definitely a fishy main course, and this is a really nutty dessert, it turns out to be a very stylish meal that you could serve to anyone, even your family. That's all for today on The French Chef. This is Julia Child. Bon appétit. Thank you.